Welcome back to Inside the Game with CNHI Sports. I'm George Bremer of CNHI Sports Indiana, and as we do every week, we're going to take you around the country to check out some of the biggest headlines around the sports world. Let's first check in with Bill Burt of CNHI Sports Boston. We now welcome in Bill Burt for our weekly spot. And Bill, quite the interesting Monday night football game this week between the Browns and the Ravens, a back and forth game. And I understand it's kind of raised your opinion a little bit of Baltimore right now.
Yeah. So first of all, you got to look at Cleveland, not their defense, but Baker Mayfield, and say, okay, that's different than what we've seen in the preview. He's really good at underneath. He's got a strong arm. He throws that, 5-yard out to the sidelines, usually on target, had one picked off in return for a touchdown. But Baltimore, something happened there. And this has been a strange year. I believe Lamar Jackson, after the way he lost against Tennessee in the playoffs, it's out there that he can't come back and win a game. If they're 2 scores down, it's over. And then he opens the season early, he plays against Kansas City, he falls flat in his face in front of Mahomes. So I see what I saw was the best player in the league last year lose his confidence and lose who he was. And it was scary because I'm starting to say this guy could be just a good 10-6 guy the rest of his career. Then Monday night happened, and he was different. And what I think he has to do is, I don't think he's a great passer. I think he's an average passer, and I'm not a genius. We all have eyes, but he's the best running quarterback in the history of the game, and that's who he is. Embrace it and be that guy. He looks ugly throwing passes. He throws it over guys that are open. So does Brady. So does everyone else. So I'm just saying, the Ravens, I had counted them out. I had counted sort of Lamar Jackson out. And that was sort of one of those wins that wakes up a franchise. And we've seen a couple of them over the years here in New England, and where you doubt the team a little bit. No, not here. I'm all in with these guys, and all in. They got to make the playoffs. And you heard a little comment with the coaches after the game, and Harbaugh said, greatest game ever played, whatever. And we just got to find a way to make the playoffs if we're going to play you. So I like the way they play. They're tough. They play defense. Didn't see a lot of defense Monday night, but something may have happened. What I'm saying is I'm now looking at Baltimore a little differently. And then they get in the playoffs in this crazy year, all hell breaks loose.
Oh, it's nuts. It's been incredible. And it's such a crucial win for Baltimore, because when you look at those AFC standings right now, the 3 wild card spots, and there are some division races still up for grabs as well, but 4 teams basically with Las Vegas losing to the Colts on Sunday. Essentially at this point, 4 teams fighting for those 3 playoff spots, separated by 1 game. Cleveland and Indianapolis are 9-4. Miami and Baltimore are 8-5. Right now, if the playoffs started today, we're at that time of year again. Baltimore be on the outside looking in. Mm-hmm. But as we look at that situation with the Raiders now dropping back to 7-6, had Baltimore drop back into that spot, the math gets really, really sketchy for them. Now they're right in the hunt. You were part of a season in 2008 with the Patriots. They went 11-5. They missed the playoffs. That's a possibility this year. There could be an 11-5 team, a 10-6 team, not in the field in the AFC. I'm wondering, 1, what was that like in New England in 2008? And 2, what do you think the likelihood is that somebody with double-digit wins might be watching from home?
Well, there's 2 ways of looking at it. And the way we always look at it is an 11-5 team didn't make the playoffs. That's incredible. The other way of looking at it is there were more bad teams in the league. Mm-hmm. And I'm in the more bad teams in the league. Is Miami 9-4, 11-5 team? They're gutty, they're tough, but I say no. So yes, that was a strange season. The Patriots, though, were always fighting to make the playoffs, and they never made it there. And they did finish 11-5. They had 2 big wins near the end of the season where it looked like they were out of it. They came back, They were 9-5 at the time, went 11-5. So, but I really looked at that team as, this isn't a great team. This is like a decent team, and they're not going to do any damage in the playoffs. That being said, I think the Raiders are out, and the Ravens will replace them. The Ravens have 3 easy games per se, all teams under 500. And I'm again, what they did on Monday night was, in my opinion, meant something. So if I'm now the number 2 seed, and I don't know who that is right now, it could be Buffalo and passing Pittsburgh, or it could be Pittsburgh. I do not want to play this Baltimore team. But that being said, don't want to play. I've been on your bandwagon here quietly, even before you were. The Colts. The Colts are, again, nobody's talking about them. They could go 12-4, 11-5. Nobody's talking about them. But again, they do a lot of things well. And what I like about Frank Reich is he's not afraid to try things. He's not afraid to lose. And those guys are scary. And Philip Rivers this is it. This is it. He might come back next year. I don't know, but this is his life. He's 39 years old, and again, he's looking pretty solid. He's making some plays. Again, we're not talking about him, but that's them right now in the Ravens. Because look, go back to the Monday night game. If the Ravens lose, I think the Patriots are going to make the playoffs, because I think the Patriots then go to Miami and look at that game as a playoff game. Again, I'm off the Raiders bandwagon. I just don't think they're that good. And all of a sudden, a couple of teams, they could lose 2 apiece, and they would, in my opinion. And the Ravens, if they lost Monday night, they're going to find a way to blow another game. That's my opinion. I thought now the Patriots are done. The Patriots literally have no chance, because they need the Ravens to lose 2 games. And that's not happening. But back to the original point, Indianapolis, Ravens, watch out for those 2. I wouldn't want to play either one.
Yeah, I think Indianapolis is fun to get the run game going. That's something Frank Reich's always wanted. He talks about wanting to be a top 5 offense. They lost Marlon Mack early this year. The offensive line's done a great job in pass protection. Hadn't been as good with the run. But these last few weeks, you're starting to see it come on. Jonathan Taylor, 150 yards on Sunday against Las Vegas. That's a huge deal. And I'd be remiss if I didn't mention one of the stories breaking today as we're filming this. One of the big stories in the NFL. It looks like the Colts are going to get their punter back. Maybe not this week, but certainly by the end of the season. Rigoberto Sanchez had surgery to remove a cancerous tumor just 2 weeks ago, back on the practice field this week. I think that's going to be a big emotional lift for this team as well. As we look at the top of the AFC, the other big primetime game this week, Buffalo knocks off the Pittsburgh Steelers, 2 straight losses for them, puts Kansas City in that number 1 spot, giving the Chiefs the only bye right now in the conference. And as you mentioned, now Pittsburgh and Buffalo in a race. The Steelers just a game ahead of the Bills for that number 2 seed. How important do you think it is this year, seeding? There's not going to be fans at games. I think the bye, being that number 1 seed, is a big deal. How important do you think it is from 2 down to 7, though, Bill?
No, I think home field advantage is meaningless. Here's one lesson we've learned here: the importance of fans. The fans definitely they lift the play of the team. Seattle has looked awful at home for the most part. They've had a couple of wins, but just average. Kansas City has looked decent at home. I mean, that, in my opinion, is one of the big home field advantages in football. The old Colts, when they played in the RCA Dome, huge, but it's pretty close where they play, the home field now. So that's why being a 6 or 5 or 7, not that big a deal to go into somewhere and go into Pittsburgh, another big home field advantage. No, it isn't. Not now. So that's why this year we've talked about it being different. We haven't seen yet we haven't seen really the ramifications of how different this is, I think, until January. Because I think even odds makers, they don't know what to do, because usually it's a 6-point swing, 3-point favorite. If 2 teams are even, you're a 3-point favorite because of the home field advantage. That's not the case here. We go back to what we talked about a long time ago: coaching and quarterback. That's what I'm hanging my hat on right now.
And we've talked a lot about the teams that have done well, the surprising teams, the teams that are surging now towards the end of the year. I wanted, before we end this week, I want to talk a little bit about who's the team that's disappointed you the most? Who did you think was going to have a better season? Who's let you down this year?
Well, I don't want to say, it's hard to say. I thought Tennessee was going to be just a little better. What's striking me about Tennessee is just how they are inconsistent. And that's not a good sign. They can win. They could win the Super Bowl. I'll say that. They got a toughness about them, but then they just disappear. They're easy to score on. Obviously the best running back, top 2-3 backs in the league. He can take over a game, but I'm just not. They've been disappointing. I thought they were 13-3, 12-14 right now, and they're more looking like a 10-6, 11-5, which is probably what they'll end up. But I thought they were going to be. They showed a lot last year, getting the AFC Championship and pushing Kansas City, but then they didn't take that next step. And you don't have a lot of time. The window is 2 or 3 years, and you want to see progress. If you ask me, that's really, and it's hard to say, the number 3 or 4 or 5 seed is disappointing, but I thought they were a number 2 seed. I thought they'd be better than Pittsburgh. I thought they'd be, I thought they'd be pushing Kansas City, to be honest with you. And that's, the other team is the Raiders, but I came in with zero expectations of them. The Raiders are the Raiders. John Gruden's a good coach, I guess, but I don't fall for that. I love you guys. I love my team and all this. I think the way he handled Antonio Brown last year showed, I think, their true colors. So I'm very disappointed because I was all in on Tennessee winning the Super Bowl, and I'm not right now.
Yeah, I think for me, it's Philadelphia. I know the Eagles have been sliding since that Super Bowl year 3 years ago, but I thought they'd at least be good enough to win a bad NFC East, and now it looks like maybe Doug Peterson's job's on the line. Carson Wentz looks broken. I don't even know what to say about what's happened with him out there. Quarterback Jalen Hurts came in and gave him a lift, but I'm shocked that the Eagles are not even competitive in the worst division in the league this year. Yeah,
Philadelphia is a strange team because they showed a lot that Super Bowl when they just hammered the Patriots offensively and showed moxie where you'd go, that could be a nice little run here. And then, they choose a different quarterback, the guy that was hurt, who's very talented. Obviously, Wentz is a talented kid or was in the running for MVP, earned a big contract. But that team's a strange team. And I've been down on them now for 2 years. I didn't have any expectations for them this year. But they're even worse. I thought a 7-9, 8-8 team. Well, they're even worse. And that division is interesting. Washington showing some toughness. See what happens when you show some toughness. You make a run. Dallas, forget about them. I know they came back with a big win. They're bullies. They just beat up on lousy teams. It's interesting because Washington is a hard team to dislike, to be honest with you.
Yeah, no, great story with what happened with their head coach and Ron Rivera. And obviously, Alex Smith got hurt this week, but his story, Washington, probably the feel-good story of the NFL so far this year.
Yeah, big story. So look, I think we have these opinions here. They could all be different a week from now or 2 weeks from now. I think the one thing I will say is I don't think home field advantage is going to matter in the playoffs. At Kansas City, if they don't come to play, they could lose to any team. Not saying they will, but they could. It's different. It's just different this year.
Oh, there's no doubt about it. I think these last few weeks are going to be really interesting. We talked about that tight AFC race. The NFC's got some tight races. Lots for us to cover here in the last few weeks of the season. Thanks a lot for your time, Bill. We'll talk to you again next week.
Let's talk next week. Can't wait. Just before Christmas. Best to Heather.
Thanks again to Bill. You can follow his coverage of the New England Patriots on Twitter at Burt Talks Sports. You can follow my coverage of the Indianapolis Colts at GM Bremer. Now let's go check in on the Big Ten with Kevin Brockway and Elton Hayes. Now we welcome in our weekly spot with Kevin Brockway of CNHI Sports Indiana, Elton Hayes of CNHI Sports Pennsylvania. And guys, it's National Signing Day, obviously impacts the Big Ten. One thing I want to touch on early here, Maryland, probably outside of the conference, people not paying as much attention. The results have not been on the field yet. This is 2 straight years now. The Terrapins are making some noise on the recruiting trail.
Yeah, I mean, Mike Locksley, for all of his discrepancies as a head coach, no one can doubt his recruiting chops, and I think we're kind of seeing that. He's a local guy from the Maryland area. I mean, that area is chock full of talent, and if he can get some of those guys to stay home and get them on the field, then I think that might kind of make up for some of his coaching flaws. I could say last year, Rakeem Jarrett, that 5-star receiver, was his big get of the class, and I watched him last month here in State College as a freshman just kind of run wild on the Nittany Lions secondary. So it'll be interesting to see if he keeps that recruiting, that level of recruiting up, if he's able to coach these guys up to their level, because I mean they're full of talent. The talent is there on the field, and it's just a matter of coaching them the proper way to kind of achieve the best results with that talent.
I'm wondering, both of you with your individual teams here, Penn State and in Indiana, I know both classes kind of small in numbers. How do you feel like things turned out for the Hoosiers and the Nittany Lions on signing day?
Well, I think for Indiana, it was, a smaller class. They had 14 guys, but they did get a local quarterback of sorts. They got 5 of the top 11 from Indiana, including Donovan McCulley, who I had a chance to see in September, who some people are thinking might be the heir apparent to Michael Penix. In terms of a guy that, is a dual threat, has a strong arm, a quick release, a lot of potential. But he'll have some time behind Jack Tuttle and Penix the next few years to develop, and perhaps in a few years that could materialize. And they also got a couple of playmakers at wide receiver, Jack S. Smith and Jordan Williams, both from the Atlanta, Georgia area, that have potential down the road to be good as well as a transfer from Florida State. Jordan Matthews, who has potential not only as a wide receiver, a little on the small side, but as a punt returner too. Returned a punt against Miami earlier in his college career.
Interesting. Yeah, similar to Indiana, what's going down there in Bloomington. Penn State had a small class, 15 kids. 4 of them were in-state. I know a few of the fans and the coaching staff was a little salty on letting a couple of guys like Nolan Ritchie or Rucci. He went to Wisconsin to join his brother. A couple of these guys kind of left the state, but what they lacked in Pennsylvania talent, they kind of tapped into Michigan. They got 4 players from the Detroit area. Tim Banks, who is the the secondary coach, the safeties coach, is from that area. He's been recruiting that area very well. So they're looking for quality over quantity. Next year is the class that they're really looking to bring in both numbers and star power. But they got a quarterback in Christian Vieju. He's a Canadian kid who is playing down at the Bullis School in Potomac, Maryland, who he's a 3 or 4-star guy. I think he was upgraded recently, but they're looking at him as kind of the next heir apparent to that quarterback room. And they've got some talent, though, coming in. A couple of pieces on the offensive line. Landon Tangwall, a 4-star guy out of Good Counsel High School, and a kid, Nate Bruce, another 4-star offensive tackle from Harrisburg. So a small but a quality class for Penn State.
Looking around the rest of the conference, anybody stand out either as maybe an instant impact freshman potentially, or anybody surprise? Was there a flip? Anything surprising today that either of you noticed?
Well, there's a guy named Donovan Edwards who went to Michigan, a 4-star, over Georgia and Notre Dame. And what's interesting about that is the tenuous situation surrounding Jim Harbaugh, and yet he commits to Michigan. Maybe that says that there's a little more stability there than what we think.
I think one surprise, this is kind of Penn State related, Dejon Warren, who's a Lackawanna College top-rated cornerback in the JUCO ranks. Penn State was high on him. It was between Georgia and Penn State. He ended up committing to Georgia back in August, and then today, he out of nowhere, he says he's going to play for Deion Sanders at Jackson State. So you never know with these things.
No doubt about that. We do have 1 week left in the regular season, sort of, I guess. I'm not sure what they consider that here in the Big Ten. Obviously, Big Ten championship game, Ohio State, Northwestern. Some of the other games on that undercard, so to speak, got canceled. Kevin, one of them, the old Oak and Bucket rivalry, the second time they tried to play that this year. Neither IU or Purdue really able to get the COVID situation under control enough to play on Friday night. What's the reaction in Bloomington losing that rivalry? And I think first time since 1920, I want to say it's not been played.
1919, the Spanish flu. So wow. Another pandemic. But, it's interesting when they rescheduled that game. I think they basically rescheduled it to be canceled again so they wouldn't inconvenience other teams. I mean, they put it on a Friday night at 7:30. A bunch of kids that are sick, and it probably would have been in 20 or 30-degree weather. So when I saw that on the schedule, I just felt like there's no way they're going to play that. Tom Allen actually confirmed today 28 cases within the program.
Wow.
But they are hoping, since the Wisconsin game, they are hoping to make progress and to start practicing by Monday to get ready for bowl prep. And we'll see where it ends up. Indiana moved up one spot to number 11 in the CFP. There was a lot of outrage about Florida not moving down more, and Oklahoma and Iowa State being ahead of them. I fielded that a little bit on Twitter last night, but still in position potentially for a New Year's Six Bowl, maybe the Fiesta against USC.
Yeah, that'd be a big moment for the Hoosiers if that happens. Elton, Penn State getting hot here at the end of the year. How excited are they about one more chance to play this year?
Right. They got a chance to get one more game closer to the 500 mark, which a win against Illinois on Saturday and a possible bowl win would bring them there to give them a 5-game winning streak to close the season, and not in the season with the losing record, which is kind of stigma. And that's although it's the season, if that does happen, they end up 5-5. While it's not the season a lot of them wanted, the coaching staff can still say, hey, look, we had adversity, we lost players, we're playing in a global pandemic, we were able to still turn this thing around, and we got to a bowl game, we finished on a 5-game win streak, we finished at 500. So hey, they're playing Illinois, who is without Lovie Smith. We found out on Sunday Illinois parted ways with the 5-year head coach there, former coach of the Chicago Bears, and Rod Smith will be the interim head coach. And Illinois is 2-5. They're coming to Happy Valley, so this is a game that, barring anything, crazy, Penn State should win and go into the bowl game should they choose with some momentum.
A lot of talk last week, obviously, about Indiana and the decision to put Ohio State in the championship game, leave the Hoosiers out. Not a lot of talk about Iowa. They might be the hottest team in the conference right now. I believe they have 6 straight wins, 20 points a game on average. They're not going to play this week either. Michigan not able to play because of COVID situations. Is there enough love for the Hawkeyes out there, guys?
I think people around college football respect Kirk Ferentz and what he's able to do. They had a lot of outside of the pandemic, a lot of distractions within that program. Not to mention that they're replacing a number of players, starting with their starting quarterback Spencer Petras. That defense has always been solid. They have a great ground game with the 2-back system there. They've got good receivers, and I think Iowa's a team, like you said, they're hot right now. They're probably the hottest team in the conference, and they probably should get a little bit more love on the national scale.
Yeah, Goodson and Mekhi Sargent, the former Key West Conch, where I started my career back in 1993, Key West High School, the Fighting Conchs of Key West. But that's interesting. A kid from Key West is running the ball up in Iowa. How they discovered him, who knows? Maybe there was a recruiting guy that was sitting on the deck at the Galleon with a few, or something like that, and decided to go over the game and see him play. But no, good job by Kirk Ferentz. You look at some of what went on in the offseason in Iowa too, in terms of the strength coach being fired. There were a lot of distractions. Ferentz was on the hot seat a little bit, and then you start the season 0-2. You lose to Purdue. You lose to Northwestern. So for them to regroup and finish the season strong, I think says a lot about Kirk Ferentz and the Iowa program and getting those kids to stick together. And they'll go to a nice bowl. Whether they go to a New Year's Six Bowl, I don't know. I still think Indiana's got the inside track as a second team in the Big Ten to go.
Yeah, I agree with that. Looking ahead to the championship game, Northwestern always strike me as a team that really reflects its head coach, Pat Fitzgerald. They will not ever stop battling. They're scrappy. They probably get more out of their talent than any other team in the conference. Is there any chance they upset Ohio State, 1? And 2, if Ohio State wins, how confident are you that they're in the Final Four and playing for a national title?
Well, this is a different defense, George, but I will refer last year to when Peyton Ramsey played Ohio State, and it wasn't pretty. I think you need a guy against that defense. As much as that defense has struggled at times, particularly in the second half, you need a guy with special arm talent, and I don't think Peyton Ramsey has that kind of arm talent. So, I mean, the defense is going to have to keep him in it, but I don't see, Northwestern being able to score enough or keep up with Ohio State once they eventually get on a roll with Justin Fields.
I agree with Kevin on that one. I saw what Ohio State did after a unexpected bye week to Michigan State. They're getting another unexpected bye week against Michigan. They're itching to get out there and play and get, one more, dress rehearsal for the playoff committee. And I think they handle business as well pretty handedly.
Over on the basketball side, we've got a little bit rolling now. Some conference games have begun. Illinois, I know, got a big win. How good is Iowa? I know we just talked about the football team. They're number 3. Luka Garza looks like a National Player of the Year candidate. Are the Hawkeyes for real? Are they a national title contender?
I think so because, a lot of people talk about Luka Garza, but Joe Wieskamp, CJ Frederick, they've got a nice supporting cast around him too. And Fran McCaffrey, being a veteran coach in this league. I think the issue will come in March with them in terms of, can they play half-court defense in a big moment? That's always been the big issue with Iowa. They tend to run and gun and try to outscore teams, but in those really clutch games in the postseason, can you come up with a stop in a big moment? That's going to be a big question for Iowa, I think, down the stretch. But you're talking about a team that, if they can win they can win the Big Ten or they're in contention, you're talking about a team that'll probably be a potential, 1, 2, 3 seed in the NCAA tournament.
I'm still going with Illinois as my pick to win it. So they, go Fighting Illini.
Yeah, really impressive in their opener against Minnesota, no doubt about it. All right, guys, I know it's a busy time, and there's a lot more to come here. We're going to have bowls to talk about next week, and the basketball season continues to heat up. Thanks a lot, guys, and we'll talk to you again next week. You all take care and stay safe.
All right, thanks.
Thanks again to Elton and Kevin. You can follow Elton on Twitter and the Penn State Nittany Lions at EHDC12. You can follow Kevin and the Indiana Hoosiers at Kevin Brockway G1. Now let's get a national perspective with our sports columnist, Clay Horning. Now it's time for our weekly spot with Clay Horning. And Clay, I know there's been some interesting revelations recently with James Harden down in Houston. He's been really running the show to an unprecedented degree. What's your take on this situation with the Rockets?
Well, little did we know just how much one player can dominate a franchise. I experienced Russell Westbrook here in Oklahoma City, we're in Norman. We're about 20 minutes from the arena. If we drive quickly, I experienced that here, but nobody complained about Russell, working hard, about always being on time. I mean, he's a guy that got into the gym. Sometimes you'd hear 6, 7 in the morning. Well, we're hearing about Harden. Some pretty good reporting from Tim McMahon with ESPN. That'd be .com if you want to go read it. There's nothing, although perhaps they'll bring him onto a sports center to talk about it. But is that among the things that we all know he was catered to personnel-wise. He ran the show offensively. All the NBA would really have to do was allow for defensive 3 seconds, I think, to defend him. But they haven't done it yet. But anyway, he would make the travel plans for the team, apparently, because there were cities he liked to go tie one on in. And, it's typical for NBA teams to fly home unless they have a game or to fly to their next destination later that night, to get in the early hours, try to get some sleep, try to begin the day in your next city, whether it be at home or be where your next game is. But if they would have multiple days off, Harden would see to it, apparently, that not only did they stay overnight in like LA, but they would even stay the next day and night in LA, which is just unthinkable. And I've written this. It's a national column that I'll be sending out probably within 20 minutes after we're done here. But I feel like the All NBA first team released only in September was LeBron and Anthony Davis, Harden, Luka in Dallas, and Giannis out of Milwaukee, who just signed long term. That's another thing going on in this world of ours. But and my contention is, if you take that team, that first team All NBA team with those 5 superstars, and it has to play itself with one difference. One team gets to play with Harden. The other team just plays with any old decent role player who's making a medium NBA. or a two-way player who tries hard, like Lou Dort, whatever. Well, he's not a two-way player anymore, but I contend that the team without Harden will win that game every single time because that team will be able to play as a team, and the team with Harden cannot. And that's why his value to me, there is no way Houston is going to get a ransom, I don't think, for him. But more than that, they may deal him anyway because he's just not worth it for all of these headaches. Not to mention they're on a new coach, they're on a new GM over there. So it's just I have tried to think about superstars in a lifetime of watching sports that were ever sort of this difficult. And Kareem wanted out of Milwaukee way back when, but he'd already won a title for the Bucks. Ricky Henderson was never happy, but he played and played and played, and he never hurt you. And I think of Emmitt Smith holding out for the Cowboys. It was clear he was worth it to them, and when they signed him long term, he came back. They won another Super Bowl. So I don't see Harden in the context of any of those previous superstars we've ever seen. And I even opened the column by saying I just would like to hear him speak to himself. Speak about himself in a thoughtful way, if he possibly can, and just try to make us understand. I can actually see him staying in Houston because they got nowhere to send him, and maybe reforming a little bit because what they've done up to date hadn't worked. But that's like the only good ending, and I don't think that team goes out and wins the West, but they could be a nice story, like Oklahoma City was a nice story last season. So anyway, yes, I fail to understand James Harden, but I also find him fascinating. And in the annals of sports, I'll give you one more thing about him. Since 92-93, when Jordan won his third title and went to play baseball, there have been 16 NBA leading scorers to average more than 30 points, 5 to average more than 32, only 3 to average more than 34, and that was Kobe in a season the Lakers didn't get out of the first round of the playoffs, averaged 35.4, I believe. Harden averaged 36 plus 2 seasons ago and averaged 34 plus last season. I mean, he is an historic scorer in the NBA. And yet, arguably, I say this also, he raises a team's floor. Let me get my hands in here. He raises a team's floor. He lowers a team's ceiling at the same time. I don't know if we've ever seen anybody like that. And anyway, I wrote about that. Good reading later.
No, that's incredible. And it really, to me, I think it puts so much pressure on Stephen Silas, the first-year coach there now, too.
Yeah.
Russell Westbrook, easy for me to say.
Both of his names.
Bringing John Wall, and now a little bit of chaos. I mean, for a first-year coach, what's this going to be like?
Well, it's going to be very difficult. Well, you know what? It's like, I don't know. It's going to be very difficult if you tiptoe around because he's James Harden and you've tiptoed around all these years. My sense is after all this, you don't need to tiptoe around. And Stephen Silas's father is Paul Silas, who I don't think took much, he was a tough NBA player. He's like, the next thing to Wes Unseld or something. And so anyway, my presumption is that he doesn't have to take a whole lot of it, and that we're at a point where the Rockets wouldn't want him to take a whole lot of it. I know that is sort of turning the NBA paradigm on its head. You sort of, Pat Riley doesn't coach anymore, but as a coach, he could be like that to players. Popovich can be like that to players. Mm-hmm. Can a rookie coach be like that to James Harden? I don't see why not now. So I would say if he doesn't want to put up with it, he probably doesn't have to. So, yeah. Which again makes it more fascinating to watch it play out as long as they don't deal him. It seems to be the only team that would really want Harden and would ever give anything up for him would be a team that wants to go from 9th in the conference to 5th, or something like that. But nobody's going from 5th to 1st because they pick him up.
No, there's no doubt about that. It'll be really interesting to watch play out. We haven't talked much college football with you lately. Most people nationally kind of left Oklahoma for dead a few weeks ago. I don't think that season started, but Lincoln Riley up to his old tricks. That offense looks really good. The Sooners are red hot. They're going into the Big 12 title game. now that you look at the overall big picture here, Iowa State, I believe, came in number 6 in the CFP standing.
They did.
Is there a chance? Is there a thought out there?
Well,
It's a crazy year. Is there?
I think you'd have to. Ohio State would have to lose the Big Ten title game, and then people might say, "Oh, how can we look at a team with one loss out of 7 games or whatever the heck it is?" What else has to happen? I guess Florida did get beat. I mean, A&M. Who's going to beat A&M? I don't think they have a game, do they? They may. There are some,
I think they play Mississippi.
Yeah, there are some games that are being played alongside conference title games as we continue to try to get more games in. But I think it's far fetched. So I guess I'll say I don't see it happening. I could probably paint you a scenario where it becomes a small possibility, but I'd have to think about that scenario. But what I've thought for a long time is that OU was playing like one of those teams. Funny thing is, all except the last time they played, which is the only time they played in about the last month, because they struggled offensively against Baylor, and then they did not get to play last Saturday against West Virginia. The second time they did not get a chance to play against West Virginia, and I think they scored 27 points in that game. But they were messy in a way they hadn't been in really all season offensively, perhaps, or maybe since the last time they played Iowa State. But the defense has come so far. I think people look at what happened offensively 2 weeks ago as just these things happen when we have players coming in and out of practice on as a result of the virus. When you are preparing to play a game and then you don't play that game as a result of the virus, that it just happened. It just happened. So I think we expect them to be. You can usually count on that offense. So I believe it will come back. The real story with OU is it's got like a top 10 defense if you only go back the last 6 weeks. And so it can stay in a game that it's not firing on all cylinders. And so my contention has been ever since they beat Texas in overtime and then after that began to roll, that they were playing like one of the best 4 or 5 teams in the country. So I don't see how they lose the Big 12 title game, to be honest, despite the fact that Iowa State is ranked number 6 in the CFP, and I think they're 8 in both polls. So Iowa State's really, really good, but I don't think they've been nearly as explosive as OU was capable of being. I don't think their defense is any better and conceivably not as good as OU's been the last 4 or 5 games. So I just think I kind of have this philosophical thing about this college football season that first there were questions, should we even play at all? And then it's sort of been like, it's a horrible time, but we're right to keep our teams together. And every time we play is sort of precious. We play this game because we like playing this game. And so I feel like that's sort of become the context through which to watch the season, and which kind of makes even, does OU win a 6th straight Big 12 title or not, kind of secondary. It's sort of it's more to be celebrated that you've kept this thing together, you've played well, you've gone as far as you've gone. And so anyway, but if we're just having a nuts and bolts conversation, I think they win. I think they probably finished the season 6-7 in the country, maybe probably the highest ranked or rated 2-loss team in the country, but probably as good as it gets is yet another Big 12 title.
It does seem like, though, I don't know how much momentum is a real thing in college football. I mean, everything changes so much from year to year. But you've got a situation now where Spencer Rattler was able to grow up through a crazy season. He's going to be, I believe, the first quarterback will be a second-year starter next year for Lincoln Riley. If they can win that Big 12 title game, go to a New Year's Six Bowl, have a good performance there, maybe there is something here to build on for 2020.
Oh gosh. I mean, there's every reason to believe that the next 3 seasons of Sooner football will be better than the previous 3. And the previous 3, were they all play, or was it 2 of the last 3 or 3 of the last? Anyway, I mean, there's every reason to believe that OU got to previous playoffs on the back of its offense and nothing more. It was an improved defense for sure last season. But, I mean, because being like 119th in the country, being 65th in the country is dramatic, but you were still just an average defense. Now you're a really good defense. And it's sort of like the last 10 years of college football has been Clemson, Alabama. I should put Alabama first. It's been Alabama, Clemson, maybe Ohio State. And I'm trying to think, and probably OU has been fourth, but it's been a distant fourth. It's been a clearly distant fourth. It's been those three programs and everybody else. So I think what you're seeing from OU right now, people can always get hurt. Stuff like that can happen. Things often don't work out in sports, but there's no reason to believe right now that they're not moving into that stratosphere that really they occupied, I'd say, in the late 80s alongside Miami, and in the middle 70s alongside, let me think about this, Nebraska, USC, maybe Michigan, maybe Ohio State then also. But so anyway, yeah, they are right there. They're on the cusp. Today is signing day. Once again, they got the nation's #1 quarterback, who happened to be the second quarterback they offered, who offered to walk on before the first guy they offered decommitted, by the way. That was news Lincoln Riley said today. They're only signing 15. You talked about in your previous segment, they're smaller classes. I think that's because, and I don't think they're going to add a whole lot in the first week of February, just because seniors can come back. Even fifth-year seniors can come back in these COVID times. So you see programs sort of preparing for that. And but anyway, by 24/7 Sports, they're the number 10 recruiting class in the nation, which I don't even care about. But when you put together strings of top 10 classes, yeah, you're okay. They've not been a top 5, top 10 recruiting class year after year. They were, but when Bob left, they were like a 12 to 15, 12 to 18 type class, and performing a little bit above them, at least a little bit above their recruiting rankings. So anyway, they're on the improve on recruiting, even at 10th. And yeah, the future is very bright.
No doubt about it. Should be an interesting last couple of weeks there for the Sooners, and definitely maybe a preview of next year and how things will go. Thanks a lot for your time again. We'll check back in with you next week.
Yeah, we'll find out what the heck's going to happen with James Harden maybe between right now and next week. I mean, as a sports fan, I'm fascinated by this. So anyway, I hope people enjoy my column, and yeah, been fun. We'll talk about it next week.
Absolutely. Thanks a lot.
All right. See ya. Bye.
Thanks again to Clay. You can follow our national sports columnist on Twitter @Clay Horning. And thanks again to all of you, as we do every week. Join us again this week when we'll take you inside the game.